If you've ever struggled with engaging students with rigorous content, classroom behaviors, and feeling the effects of burnout, this is absolutely the episode for you, and you're going to want to hang out all the way to the end because there's some surprising twists. And so I don't want to waste your time, so let's jump right over into the episode and let's get going. Hey teachers, welcome to Teacher Talk. If we haven't met yet, my name is John and we are in the Teacher Talk live studio today, and we have Callie Kramer with us today. She is a fellow teacher. She is an instructional coach, and we're going to hear a little bit about what instructional coaches do and how instructional coaches and good pedagogy can help us as it relates to teacher burnout and classroom behavior. And so I'm going to turn it over to Callie, and I just want to ask you, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you go from middle school teacher to instructional coach?
So it's been a journey. I've been in middle school the entire time. I started out in Florida, actually, my first year. I was not an education major. Someone said, hey, you should try teaching. And I was like,
Right.
All right. So I got an opportunity. And
Yes.
I remember just like that first day being like, I'm in charge of all these kids. Like, as a 22-year-old, like, it was crazy, and did really well and fell in love with it. So I followed it through, taught ELA, taught social studies, taught math, sixth grade. And then I moved up to North Carolina, worked at a public charter school out there, 8th grade ELA and social studies again. And then now I'm back in the public school system and been here ever since. And I taught 8th grade ELA, and then they said, hey, do you want to be a literacy coach? So I moved up at that moment.
Good deal.
Yep. Did a little bit of intervention at the same time.
Right.
And now I'm a full-time instructional coach. For all subject areas.
So how do you see the difference between being in the classroom versus being outside the classroom and kind of looking in? What's the view from that altitude?
Yeah, we like to say that bird's eye view. Man, It was eye-opening. It really was. As you know, in your position, you see the bird's eye too. I feel like you're kind of in your bubble when you're in the classroom, and that's the best part. But then at the same time, it's like getting out there is also really good. And more teachers, I wish, had opportunity to see, vertical alignment or best practices in other rooms. Like, it's so fruitful.
One thing that you pointed out there is being in the classroom, you really are autonomous. And that is an extraordinary feeling. You come outside of the classroom and then you see all these autonomous classrooms. How do you work to bring like cohesion across the board between so many different teaching styles and like personalities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like the teachers that I work with are my students, and it's really about building them up, really highlighting, everyone's good at something.
Absolutely.
And your strength may be someone else's weakness. And I enjoy making those connections for everybody.
It's the unique opportunity to impact students in a different way, because ultimately you're impacting teachers and you're helping teachers in multiple different ways, whether it's organization, whether it's, it's understanding best teaching practices or classroom management practices, or even for that matter, just being a personal friend and listening to teachers vent about their frustrations and not being able to engage students, because some students are extraordinarily hard to engage. And that brings a challenge to the teacher. And so one of the questions I had for you is, you've been in education now for about a decade, and what have been some of the defining moments or some of the best lessons that you've learned quite along the way?
Yeah, I learned that relationships first, relationships daily.
Yes.
Like, that is the number one thing, especially in the middle school, high school zone. Like, it is hands down a game changer. And I think that that's my number one thing I had to learn. I also learned that the job is always going to be there, right? So I remember my first year, I just killed myself prepping for that and going home and spending all these hours prepping. But I've learned through the years that the job is always going to be there. And the best part about teaching is you could just start over again tomorrow and try again.
You sure can.
So it's not the end of the world.
So if I hear what you're saying right, it's okay to leave work undone until the next day?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
And it's a hard lesson to learn, but It's so real.
So it is a very difficult lesson to learn because, I find that teachers are task oriented, number one. Number two, most of them are fairly self driven and they want to achieve and they want to achieve for their students. And a lot of times we equate that to having to work all these extra hours, which there is some of that that comes along with teaching just in general. But the truth of
Yeah.
it is that, teachers are wearing themselves out. What are some of the ways, maybe some of the things that we can do inside the classroom so that we're not wearing ourselves out at home as well?
Yeah. It's kind of a twofold. It's hard because the way to do that is to have a student centered classroom, right? As a classroom where the students are doing the majority of the heavy lifting.
I
But it's
gotcha.
hard coming in as a first year, like trying to learn that. How do you give up ownership to the kids, right? But
Right.
when you do and you have a classroom where they're doing the work, you get to sit back and just facilitate that. And it really does
Absolutely.
help.
So, you used a word right there. You used the word facilitate, and that's become like a dirty word to some people in education because you hear this refrain all the time. Well, teachers don't teach anymore. All they're doing is teaching the test, and all they're trying to do is get kids to pass this test, which some of that is true because they do have to pass tests. But I don't
Yeah.
think the word facilitator is a dirty word because the idea is that we're facilitating learning. In other words, I think it's giving students or enabling students to have charge of their own destiny as it relates to their education. Am I off track on that, or do I have a good idea there?
No, no, that is exactly how I see it too. And I think when
Mhm.
everyone says we're teaching to the test or we want them to do the work, we want them to think. I think that's a big movement that I'm a part of these days.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm here to push the kids to think.
Absolutely. I saw a TED talk today. I didn't get to listen in on it, but the headlines were is that teachers are working too hard and students aren't working hard enough. And I absolutely believe that. Especially in middle school, over in the elementary school, they kind of hold their hands and take them everywhere. But, when kids get to middle school, they get a lot of freedom and they need to be able to harness that and be able to take control of their own destinies. And part of that
Exactly.
is coming back hands off and getting them to work a little bit harder. So one of the defining statements that you make, and I've heard you say even in your content, and maybe not directly, is that you make the statement that pedagogy or the science of teaching or teaching
Yeah.
is greater than pacing guides. Can you unpack what it means and why that's so important to you?
Yeah, it's interesting coming into this role as an instructional coach.
Mhm.
I supported a reading program at my last school, and that's curriculum based, and pacing guides come with that, and expectations, and what I noticed is that we need to peel back some of those layers and really look at like the act of teaching, like what is good practice, because that is going to be more impactful than just blowing through our curriculum Monday through Friday. So I think that's why I'm leaning like pedagogy over everything. Like what is your
Yes,
belief and how you teach and how you manage your room and the culture of your classroom? Like
absolutely.
that the kids are going to walk in and want to learn. And
Mhm.
so that is the focus.
Hey, teachers, I don't want to take away from all the important things that Callie is sharing with us, but if you've gotten any encouragement from this or any type of value, we want to ask you to go ahead and subscribe and follow along with Teacher Talk and keep up with what it is that we're doing. Also, we want to encourage you to go down into the description box. There's all kinds of free resources down there, and they're made specifically for you and specifically for teachers, and we want you to have. But more than that, we want to restore joy to the classroom, one teacher at a time. And that means you. And most of all, we want you to stay strong and keep teaching. So, do you think that one of the problems is that there's a lot of pressure on teachers because there's so many things to get through that they feel like they have to go directly through the standards and get through all the content, and so they just overlook some of the best teaching practices?
I mean, yeah, it's stressful coming from top down. They tell you you need to finish this lesson on this calendar day. Like it's
Mhm.
down from top down. What's crazy is that from people that aren't even working at a school. And yes, pressure.
So, how do you, as a coach, try to convince or try to help teachers understand that yes, all the standards are important, and it's really important to get through as much as this as you can, but for lack of words, it's more important to focus on depth on the things that you are covering. How do you get that across? Because I find that to be very difficult.
Yeah, it is.
Hmm.
We've done a lot of work around like talking about depth of knowledge, actually, just what like assessing the student with the depth of knowledge. So the kid's response, is that more like a level one or is it a level four? So we actually are assessing like how much the kids are responding, and that is how much they're thinking. So we've really just, I'm opening up conversations around, are we giving them a moment to really think deeply? And that kind of motivates more people to be like, maybe I do need to have more depth over the breadth.
So, what are some strategies that you give to teachers to help them work through that process?
ChatGPT.
That's the same
Not
thing I use.
I'm not even joking. It has been amazing. Yeah, because we can plug in, they bring in some questions, but we realize it's just recall. I'm working right now with social studies specifically, and a lot of the
Hmm.
questions are factual based. Like that is the standard. It's true. But we're also trying to kind of up the ante with literacy and like just increasing reading. That's just statewide here. It's just at an all-time low. So we're trying to really increase the literacy, and social studies is a great spot to do it because they have the content. And
Oh, yes.
so
Absolutely. In Florida and at our schools, we believe that every teacher is a reading teacher. And
yeah.
so every teacher has to go and get, some training every however many
Okay.
years because of exactly what you said is at least in the history class, that is a great place to teach literacy. It absolutely is. So what is like the heartbeat of what you do? I mean, what keeps you inspired and motivated to help other educators?
The kids, they still have my heart. No matter where I am, I'm like always drawn to them, and just their energy and like seeing them be
Yeah.
successful, and just it's always been them since the minute I stepped foot into this career. That and growing into this coaching position the past 3 years, I see the teachers as my students in a way. Like where I
Right.
see us all equal. Like I'm learning from them, they're learning from me, but I love them like I would my students. Like I want to see them be successful.
Hmm.
And I truly will work. I love boots on the ground. I'll come in with you. I'll work with you. Like whatever you
Right.
want me to do something for you. Like that's just who I am. And I'm starting to really love that part of it, working with adults too.
I got to ask this question, and I hope you take it well. But is the instructional coach? Are they actually the administrator's snitch? Do they really go back and tell all the stuff to the principal of all the things that are going wrong in the class, or is that just a rumor? Is that a myth?
Gosh, the principals don't want to know all that.
I guarantee it.
They really don't. They do not. They want us to sift through what is like a 10 out of 10 problem that needs to be handled. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they half the time they already know what's going on before I even get to them. So,
They usually do, but I know that goes around our school a little bit, and our instructional coaches try to make it clear. Listen, we're not reporting back to anybody.
exactly.
We're just coming in to help. So one of the things that you talk about is transforming lessons into opportunities for curiosity and collaboration. What do you mean by that, and what does that look like in a real classroom?
Yeah. So instead of, the institutional norms of sitting in a desk or, just staying there the whole time and the teacher's lecturing, instead having more student to student talk, having them get up if you
Hmm.
can, if the space allows for it. I read a lot and have coached teachers on like vertical spaces, meaning like
Hmm.
writing on whiteboards and just trying to change up what we call institutional norms.
Right. So you would be in favor of things like gallery walks and things of that nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Except if it's in a PD, right? If it's in a PD, we don't want gallery walks in our
Listen,
PDs,
John,
right?
if I have to get up and do a gallery walk,
We just want to go in, hear what they got to say, and get out of there, right? We don't want a gallery walk there.
it's crazy how we actually would prefer to sit down.
Absolutely. So how does building, and this is really the crux,
Okay.
because I believe, and it's just a theory of mine, it's not just mine, it maybe belongs to others, but I believe if we teach from bell to bell, right? Engaged learning,
Yeah.
that we can eliminate the vast majority of behavior problems in our classroom. So how does building curiosity and collaboration, how does that address the common classroom management issues, which are usually minor disruptions, tapping on the table, getting up and calling out and things like that? How does it help?
Yeah. I mean, engagement is a classroom management strategy. Like, if your students are engaged in bell to bell, it is going to help. If you keep them, they can't guess what's next. Like, you're like,
Right.
all right, let's move to the next thing. The transitions are that's the piece that's hard there, right? How do you transition your kids from one thing to another? But that's coachable
Yes.
and that's fixable. But if you have it planned out that okay, I have 5 minutes is scary. If you have 5 minutes left before that bell rings, you got to pull something out. Long
Absolutely.
time in the classroom.
I can remember years ago there was a teacher. He didn't quite get it bell to bell. I think he may have started at the bell, but he quit long before the bell. And I remember one of his
No
students
doubt.
crawled into a cabinet because it was an old science room, and she got in there and she busted a water pipe and flooded the entire room. I mean, it's still not a good room to be in because they couldn't get it cleaned out. But that's exactly what happens when there's free time. Right. I know that we try to reward students for hard work, give them a little free time, look on their Chromebook, but even that has to be managed a little bit, don't you think?
Absolutely. I was obsessed with timers. Okay. So I still will advocate for them to this day.
Yeah.
I have a timer for you to talk. I have a timer for you to write. I have a timer for you to walk to the other side of the room. And then I have a timer for us to do the activity. Like, it is structured as much as
Mhm.
possible. Did I need it? Probably not all the time, but it was what the kids were used to, and therefore it worked.
So I can tell you that I know a lot of teachers that use timers. I was a varsity basketball coach for many years, amongst other things, and I
Right.
ran my practices on timers. And the
Yes.
reason why is because if I didn't have a timer, I would get started in on one thing,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't leave that one thing. I would just stay there and
Right.
forget about what's going on. So the timer,
It's for us too.
again, it is for us,
Yeah.
but it also, I mean, it lets us know that we got to go on to something else, but it just helps us manage our time a little bit better. But also, it reminds us that there are other things that are important too,
Right. Love that.
because basketball is all about fundamentals, and so is learning. And so
Right.
we have several things that we have to cover. So when you work with a teacher, sometimes there are ingrained patterns and thought processes that have been learned over time. How do you help a teacher start small so that they can move towards a student centered approach? And what I understand you to say by student centered is the idea that they are taking control of their learning and they are doing more of the work while the teacher facilitates what's happening in the room. How do you do that?
At the right in the beginning, we're day one. We're trying to flip a classroom that has been teacher centered for 3 months. That's our scenario. My first move is to implement small turn and talks. So throughout that teacher talking the whole time, we're gonna just okay, when 10 minutes in, let's do a 2-minute turn and talk with their partner and talk about what you're talking about. Or let's do a 2-minute, they write something down and reflect on what you're talking about. Something where the student is actually engaging with the content and not the teacher actually
Mhm.
them. That
Right.
would be the first thing. And then the second thing I would say is feedback. I would encourage the teacher to give immediate, like, they're circulating the room during that 2-minute timer and they're giving feedback. They're having conversation with the kids because their kids are going to see it as accountability.
So there's a teacher at my school, and he has what he calls the workflow. And
Okay.
so he is structured like this is what's going to happen in the classroom. And I think he kind of runs it on a timer as well. So he's going to take so many minutes here, so many minutes here, so many minutes here. And obviously that is an effective use of his time. Do you teach any type of particular workflow or a way that the class, for instance, maybe it's bell work, and then I'm going to do some direct instruction, and then we're going to do some instruction together. How would you set that up?
Yeah, I've tried multiple different things. I mean, the big discussion right now is was discovery versus like guided, right? So in math,
Mhm.
they're trying to do the discovery, try it out on your own, then I'll teach you. I seem to favor the one you just said, which was like an I do, we do, you do model.
Yep.
And that's I used to open up with a bell ringer for classroom management purposes. And then
Absolutely.
I did something, we tried it together, and then I would end my last chunk of class with the independent assignment, and that would be my exit ticket or
Right.
what.
An exit ticket right there. So I absolutely agree that I do, we do, you do is the best. I think it's the best instructional strategy that's probably come out in a long time. And it's almost actually natural because even whenever I work with teachers, well, or I should say I'm, the athletic director at my school, whenever I get a brand new coach, they don't know everything that there is to do at my school.
Right.
And so I do those things for them in the first year, then I do them with them, and then
Nice.
I turn it over to them, right? I
Okay.
turn it over to them completely fully. And it 100% works.
Right.
I kind of sometimes wonder why we kick against that strategy. What do you think it is? Is it because there's still, like an old mindset of like the sage on the stage, or because it takes extra planning, or what's the issue there?
Yeah, so I've read about this. I've posted. Anyone that goes to my TikTok, I've talked about people are against it. And the only argument I've heard that I could understand is that when we show them a model, right, then they're just going to copy us. So that has been the argument against it. Rather than modeling for them, give it to them to try first, then you can do your I do, we do, you do. So that has been the argument I've heard.
So if the teacher is the expert in the room and the teacher presents a model and the
Yeah.
student copies the model, what is wrong with that?
Yeah, it's so then there's not as much thinking that could occur.
Mm,
Okay. So we're
gotcha.
talking about the level of thinking. Yeah. So I'm not saying all students would copy, but according to Building Thinking Classrooms by Peter Liljadal, there is a
Uh-huh.
good chunk, 70%, I think, between 60 and 80 that just copy. According to his study. So that was eye opening for me because I've always done I do, we do, you do, and I still do it. I lean
Hmm.
on. I'm like you. I find success with it.
Absolutely lean on it too. And we're talking about working with, adults.
Yeah.
And, if I went into another position that I didn't know anything about, I would want somebody to come alongside me and show me what to
Exactly.
do, and I feel like over time I could develop that into something
Yeah,
a little bit different. So
I
maybe
agree.
students can do that too. So the biggest thing that we do here at Teacher Talk, and this is what intrigues me, is because I believe, and you have presented, that when students are engaged,
Yeah.
that you have less problems in the classroom. And maybe it's certainly in the top three, but maybe the number one cause of teacher burnout is classroom disruptions and the behavior of students. And so my question to you is if teachers made this shift, in your view, this focus to curiosity and collaboration, how would that help reduce teacher burnout?
I definitely saw a shift in my career once I started having more student-centered classroom, and I attested to the fact that the students are taking ownership of their learning. And it's no longer the teacher's job to make sure they learn. Like you said, it's kind of facilitating the learning. And
Hmm.
the teacher can kind of sit back and really give attention to the students who need it, which
Yes.
that is the hardest thing. You have a class of 36, right? And then they're
Yep.
like, how do you differentiate? So, I mean, there are students who can do it on their own. So we need to give them that chance.
Well, if you have a class of 36 and 24 students can do it on their own,
Yeah.
then all you would have to do is pull two or three small groups to the side, right?
Not-
And the model that you're teaching gives the teacher then also the ability to circulate the classroom, interact with students, talk, ask higher order questions in the process of that. And it's been my personal thought, and it's some that I've taught as well, that is part of the relationship building process. Because when students are engaged in work and they're engaged in work talk to the teacher,
Mm.
guess what they're not engaged in? poor
Everything.
behavior,
Right.
right? I mean, it's not that you aren't going to have some that get off task, but that's the
Yeah,
job of the facilitator to put them right back in. And
exactly.
so, what role does professional? Our goal, or my goal, is to restore joy to the classroom one teacher at a time, because I really think it's missing, because teaching is hard.
Yeah.
But what role do you think that when professionals start to feel joy and they start to feel accomplishment, how do you think that might affect long-term teacher retention?
Gosh, it's everything. I mean, joy is we all need to feel it. I mean, and coming to work, nothing's worse than coming to work if you don't like it or it's frustrating or you feel like you're hitting a wall. So finding that joy, what about the job? Like why are you here? What is,
Right.
what is the highlight of your day? Like really thinking about what made you happy that day at work. Sometimes you have to dig deep, but it's there.
So we do. One of the things I try to encourage, and I got to admit, I don't practice it very well myself, but trying to focus on the small victories. What are the small victories that took place in your
So
classroom today?
yes.
And write them down,
Yeah.
because I think the habit of the teacher is teaching's hard, but then they go home, but they don't leave work at school. And I
Yep.
don't mean grading or planning or things of that nature, but they end up bringing home all the misbehavior, the
Yep.
admin that didn't support them, the parent that sent them a
Yeah.
nasty email. And so I think that being able to focus on small victories, how have you been able to like help teachers see the small victories from working with them in the classroom?
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, it's me pointing them out. It's me like, "Hey, did you notice that this happened? Like, that's amazing. Like,
Yep.
that's a win. We want that one kid that's never
Yes,
participated. He participated today. Like, that your work's done for the day. Like, you did it."
it
Um,
absolutely is.
yeah, so just moments like that, just trying to point it out and highlight that.
What you just said is really important to hear, is that sometimes they have to be pointed out, because there's so much going on, there's so much noise, there's so much chatter, there's so much, sometimes being disgruntled sometimes as a teacher, that we miss it. And I think teachers sometimes are looking for the great big breakthrough, the
Yeah,
big one, the one that you could see from outer space, and overlook the very small things.
yeah,
Did this kid get it right today? Did
yeah.
they come in today? Right. Or, they've come in here for 2 weeks. They haven't done a single thing. And today they put their name on the paper. Doesn't sound like much, but
We'll take
it's a big win in some ways. And so I think that, so as an instructional coach, what patterns do you see in teachers who are like on the edge of burnout? When you walk into a classroom, can you pick it out? You can say, hey, this teacher is in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that they're trying to control every single thing that's going on in their room. And we just can't. It's not feasible for us to do that. And instead of trying to manage the kid, we need to manage the environment and how
Absolutely.
we facilitate that whole space. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's like, of course we get burnt out. I mean, we've all been there. And
Yes.
it's
Yes. So you made an important point right there, is that when you're in a classroom, you're actually managing group dynamics, not necessarily individuals. I mean, sometimes you have to do that. One or two kids, if you manage them really well, you'll do well elsewhere. But
yeah,
you're managing group dynamics. And if they get away from you,
yeah.
like if you start making threats, or I'm going to do this, or you're going to get that, the dynamic can get away from you.
Yeah.
One of the worst places on the entire campus to be is in the lunchroom with a
Ugh,
bunch of middle school kids.
don't get me
And
started.
I manage that thing every day, and I hear these people say, you need to put them on silent lunch. Tell them they can't talk. And if they talk, you're going to write them up. And I'm like, what for? There's
Yeah,
250 kids in here. You think that they're not going to test that? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
you have to manage the dynamic. Now, make for us the connection. How vertical learning, as you're talking about, and collaboration, how does it manage the dynamic right there?
Yeah. I mean, it's the planning piece is really how you manage all of that. Like, you have
Mm,
to one it's hard when you don't know your kids. The first week of school, you don't know your kids. I
right.
honestly I always felt like boot camp. The first week, the first month, is exhausting. No one anyone who's not a teacher does not understand. It is a lot. But once you get into the motion and you know your kids, it's about setting them up for success. I know that Johnny should be on this side of the room because the door's on that side of the room and he's gonna look out the room, right? I'm gonna strategically put him in specific locations.
Hmm.
I know that, Maria is good at making people talk to her. So I'm gonna put her with someone that doesn't want to talk, right? So like learning to really you're facilitating that, right? You're placing them, you're ensuring that the window's covered so they can't look out the window, like just thinking about all the things that could adhere their learning. Or I'm going to put so and so near the board because I want to use proximity with him walking around the room.
Yes.
All of
I,
that.
I think I think the power of proximity is probably the second greatest classroom management strategy. I really think the power of routine is.
Yes,
I
yes.
did a study on chronic tardies and how
Okay.
that happens several years ago, and what I learned is that students who are chronically tardy come from homes that do not have established routines. In other words, they don't have they don't have a set time for supper, they don't have a bedtime, they don't have a get up time, they don't have any of those things. So when kids come to school, well, guess what they try to do? They try to make decisions as they go. And as much as kids kick against routines, I really believe that they crave routine. They want to know what is going to happen when I go in this room today.
I
And
thought
if as go ahead.
I would say 1,000%.
And if the teacher can say, this is the way it starts, this is the way it flows, and this is the way it ends, I believe that brings clarity. It's the power maybe of the mundane, of
Yeah.
the routine. Do you help teachers establish routines in their classroom, or is it like, I'm the teacher, I already got my thing and I'm just gonna what do you run into right there?
Definitely a mixture of both. I try to kind of face it like, what if, try something new, or I will kind of highlight a teacher doing it and maybe get a video of them and kind of showcase, them and they'll speak on it and why it's working and how it's working and all the good
Hmm.
things. And sometimes it motivates people in that way. Um,
Right.
but yeah, routines. Honestly, lately I've been doing a lot of like reading routines, like how to science, social studies, like the arts, fine arts, like how do you they need like a routine for when they're reading something, which never really thought about it, but the kids just has anyone taught them like a reading routine? So we're kind of
Right.
working on it now.
Right, especially whenever there's so many students that just don't read today. There's so much video interaction that there's not a lot of reading, and what reading there is very short. That's one of the things that we found out as testing is that kids don't have a lot of stamina when it comes to taking, the long standardized tests, and they kind of just wear out. So you read a lot of teacher books, and I watch your content all the time, and you're always presenting from a book. So
Yes.
what if any do you find especially helpful for a teacher who's struggling with engagement and burnout? Is there something that you would recommend to teachers today?
Man, my go-to for the past like year, I mean, it has rocked my world. My entire like just this philosophy of teaching has changed from it. And that is Peter Liljedahl's book, Building Thinking Classrooms. I mean, I just can't talk about it enough.
Hmm.
It has rocked my world. It is actually focused it was for math, but so many teachers came back and said, "We need one for all subjects." So he has multiple editions out there, but it's so good. Everyone has to go read it.
So if you could give us one takeaway that would help teachers from the book that you just mentioned, what would it be?
Yeah, it's that we are not getting our kids to think enough. That's really the basis of it. And how do you? And the kids actually want to. Like we just don't give them enough opportunity. So that's that. I do have a
S-
second book.
what's your second book?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, I was like, this one actually is not just focused on education,
Uh-huh.
but it is a mosh podge of people in like the, corporate world, parents, and teachers. And then this author came together, David Yeager, and he created this book, The Science of Motivating Young People, and it was for ages 10 to 25. And that has been very enlightening and kind of like it made me feel reassured as a teacher that like they're learning about the behaviors of this age. There's a reason behind it. And it's nice as a teacher to know that like it gets better and we can do
Well,
things to help.
how do we motivate young people?
Yeah.
Does he answer is the answer in the book?
Yes. So, I mean, really, it talks about how they want to feel heard. There's a lot of
Uh,
discussion on
yep.
voice,
Mhm.
and they want to feel like they have a purpose.
Yep.
And so I take that as an educator and like think about, do we give them purpose for what they're doing in the classroom?
Absolutely.
So those are my takeaways.
Somehow algebra has got to connect to something that's real life, right?
It has
Yeah.
to, it has to. Hey,
My
when we did this wall, okay, we did
You
this
sure
night.
did.
We had
So
to do a
you're
lot of math.
absolutely. That is exactly okay, not that exact example, but I give the example of you want to build a fire pit in a patio, right?
Yep. Mhm.
And you don't know how much material you need. You don't know how many blocks you need. You don't know how big the circle is going to be. You have to have a way to figure that out. And I remember this. I'll never forget this. This one kid jumped up and he says, "Hey, Miller," he says, "I'll just pay somebody to do it." Right. And I said, "Yes." I said, "You will." And that's why it's going to cost $15,000 for you to have a fire pit in a patio versus $2,500 and you build it yourself because you can't do a math problem. That's
Crazy.
that's purpose, right?
Yes.
That's something to look forward to. Looking ahead, what gives you hope about the next generation of students? Because we are in the midst of Gen Alpha, and if there's one thing I know about Gen Alpha is they think they're our co-equals. They like think that we are like colleagues, and we're
Yeah.
not. So, what gives you hope?
You know, it's interesting because our 6th graders are the last of the COVID babies. So
That's
they were
right.
in kindergarten.
Yep.
And I'm definitely seeing a difference between our 8th grade down all the way down to 6th grade and the ones that have came through already. And my hope is what I'm seeing is that they were getting the thinkers back. Like they are free thinkers. And so how do we as educators capitalize on that? Because they're coming with the drive, but we need to continue it through middle school. So I'm excited about that. It was refreshing to get to know this new group and see that potential.
That is, I believe that's 100% accurate. I just
Yeah.
did a piece of content was talking about Gen Alpha and pointed out that they're independent thinkers,
Yeah.
right? And when I say independent, I don't necessarily mean that in a positive way per se, but they are independent thinkers and they do want to do things on their own. However, as we've been talking throughout this thing, they need a guide,
They
right?
do. Yeah.
And what they will not accept today very well is, hey, you're going to do this and you're going to like it, right?
Right.
They want a facilitator, a guide, somebody that has the ability to show them how to get from point A to point B. And I
Yep.
think that that is
Yes.
what you're trying to get across in all
Yep.
your content is that very point right there.
Mhm.
How can you sum that up a little bit better as how you actually try to implement that in a classroom and trying to help a teacher understand that this is more about getting them from here to there versus you presenting? How do you
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah. I mean, the goal is that they grow. They are learning. So not us. We know the content, but how are we ensuring that they're learning it? And our next generation doesn't learn by lecture. I mean,
They do not.
my millennial generation, we hated lecture in college.
Hmm.
So it's only going downhill. The
I
2-minute TikToks, I mean, we can't keep up these days. But definitely the fact that we're no longer just, brain dumping all this information. They're no longer studying. I don't know if you're seeing that in high school, but our middle schoolers, we can't even ask them to go home with homework because they just won't.
Oh yeah, if I were in the classroom, you couldn't pay me to give out homework because it would
Yeah,
never come back, and
exactly.
you would pull every bit of your hair out. So, and
Yes.
I don't
So
have much left, so I would definitely not do that for sure. So
yeah, so
do you advocate for teachers not to assign homework by
I
chance?
do. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of homework. It's not equitable. I mean, we have kids that they don't have internet at
Good point.
home. They're
Absolutely.
You know what? They're
Yep.
babysitting or whatever, they're
Yep.
working, and
Yes.
we can't ask them to all do the same
Yes.
thing overnight. So, what I
Yep.
have learned through that and adult learning is the same way. You gotta provide time in class. If you do give homework, you gotta provide time in the next day for them to all do it if needed.
100% agree. You know, the biggest thing that I see in particular, just using math as an example, you send sixth grade math home to a parent and they will go nuts
Yeah,
because it's just not something that people do all the time. Just the regular everyday mom and dad are
yeah,
not prepared to do that. And so if a kid did not get the concept in class, how will they get the concept at home when there's no one there that knows? So
exactly.
basically it's self-defeating in essence. And then we penalize if we're going to grade that homework when somebody comes, well, you didn't do your homework. Well, I couldn't. And
Yeah,
for a lot of teachers, that's not even a valid excuse, but it
right.
is. It absolutely is. And
Yeah,
please, teachers, if you're listening to that, don't misunderstand the tone of that, because we 100% support you and have been in the classroom and struggled with these issues. It's just food for thought is all it is. So
yeah.
let me ask you a question. If you had a teacher tomorrow and you were sitting across from them and you were able to see them in the eyes and you knew that they were stuck, they're exhausted, and they're about to give up, what is one mindset shift or classroom change that they could try tomorrow that would bring some immediate wins and some immediate success to begin to turn things around? What are some things that a teacher could do, because they're listening to us right now?
Yeah. I would say instead of you telling your students that, give it to them as a question. Give it to them as a discovery. That's all. I would start there. Because instead of lecturing on this tomorrow, tell them a little bit, but then have them find out more on their own or explore with a group or explore with the internet. Something else. Just give it to them. Just try it. See how they do.
So just let them go look for an answer of some
Yeah.
sort and see what they come back with.
Yep.
So I'm an advocate of the idea of letting kids do something, and I don't want to say setting them up for failure, but allowing them to get the wrong answer
Mhm.
and the reason why, and to let them discuss that wrong answer and then interject with questions that leads them to the right answer. Is that kind of what you're talking about? So we turn
Yeah.
class into a discussion.
Yes, and engage them, you know what I mean? Like, instead of lecturing, why don't you ask them for their opinion? But to make it academic, go on and find something on the internet that supports your opinion, or
Sure.
find someone else in the room that supports your opinion. Like, just taking what they're interested in and, like, all of that and really, like, trying to put it in your lesson. But most of all, give it to them. It's not on us all the time, but give it to
Hmm.
them, the student.
Yep. Yep. That is one of the very points that I made here recently in some content, is ownership in the classroom has to be on the student.
Yeah.
It absolutely has to be. In particular with this group of students that are coming through this Gen Alpha, because they really do believe that they are our co-equals. And I think we can leverage that to
Yes,
some
that's
degree.
exactly what I think,
Is
yeah.
is what now you and I mean, we all know that that's not true, but the goal in the classroom is to create an atmosphere for learning. So if we have to have a guided way of letting them think they're in charge, well,
Yeah.
then why not do that? That's where I come from. Is that kind of does that sum up kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we're building leaders. That's
Exactly.
kind of what's happening. We're facilitating the learning of leadership in that regard.
Absolutely. That's very good. So, Callie, as we try to land the plane, where can people find you at on TikTok? Do you have any other socials? You on Instagram, YouTube, or where can they find you, and so that they
Yeah.
can catch up with what you do?
Yep, so I am currently on TikTok, Instagram, and I have a Facebook page, all under the name Coach Callie. So
Coach
you
Callie.
so you
So
can
they can
find me.
Yep, they can find you there. Any plans for the future, like expanding your what you do, like into a private business, or a side hustle where you can work with some teachers, build a
Yeah.
community or anything like that? Coach Callie's community or something?
Yeah, it's catchy, right? I would love nothing more than to build a business around, literally just one-on-one coaching with teachers and going into schools and helping them one-on-one. My heart has always been with, the beginning teacher community.
Yes.
So, that is definitely where I would like to do more work in.
Right. So you and I both know, and this wasn't one of our topics, but you brought it up, is the difficulty to get new teachers to stay in the profession, because that first year is
Woo.
really, really hard. It doesn't take long,
Yeah.
especially if you've come out of an EDU where you've been in a controlled internship and had a co-teacher and had everybody else in there. It doesn't take long to figure out, hey, the honeymoon's not over. The honeymoon's over, and you're not in Kansas anymore. How do
Yeah.
you work with that teacher? Because we got to get teachers past the 3-year mark. What do
Yeah.
you think that what can we do to support it? What can you do as a coach, and what can I do as a dean of students to support these teachers?
The biggest thing I've seen is that the majority of BTs, beginning teachers, say that it's okay when it's really not. I think that's the biggest concern that I'm seeing is they're trying to stay strong and be good at the job. But unfortunately, the job could be burning them out or they don't know best practice and they just don't speak up.
Yes.
So I encourage any new teacher, anyone thinking about teaching that, just know that like teachers love teachers. Like we
Teachers
want
love
more
teachers.
teachers. And it becomes we're truly like a community. Like as you know, you're building your own, like we're worldwide. Like you see a teacher, you
Abs-
meet a teacher in public, like we're like, hey, like it's so good.
Absolutely.
And so just that camaraderie of like this community as a whole, this career path, this profession, we love more teachers. So we want to share the love is really what I'm getting at. Like show the new teachers on campus that like we appreciate you this is a hard job and we are here to support you
Hmm.
and all that. Um, yeah, I ran the beginning teacher program for a year last year before I decided to take this position.
Uh-huh.
But I think what I noticed is that they're yearning to learn and just providing that opportunity and that safe space to kind of vent and learn.
Right. They want to make an impact. They're teachers
Yeah.
to some degree because they've been impacted by a teacher. And
Yes.
so they want to make the same impact. I guess that, for lack of better words, they probably didn't know how hard it is to make an impact. It's very
Yeah.
difficult, and it's slow. It's not, you
Yes.
don't see it. A lot of times you
Yeah.
don't get to see this until students are graduating. I'm in that unique position. I've been teaching long enough
Yeah.
to have students that have gone, they're married, they've got kids, and I get to see them out and they're like, hey, Mr. Miller, they still refer to me as, or
Love
coach,
it.
and
Yeah.
it's like, man, hey, coach, remember that time you got mad and threw the clipboard and this, that, and the other? Man, that was funny,
Yeah.
and you get to see them be a parent and stuff. And so I really want everybody to hear that, is that we love teachers and we
Yes.
want to restore joy to the classroom, one teacher at a time, because teaching shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this much of an emotional drain, mental drain, a spiritual drain. It's always going to be a physical drain because you're up and going, but it should not do what it's doing to teachers. Like 59% of teachers are ready to walk out the door at any moment. And
Yeah.
so we want teachers to stay in the profession and have a good time doing it. Would you agree with that? That's
Couldn't agree more.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Callie, I sure do appreciate you coming in, and I wish that we
Yeah.
had hours and hours to go on and talk, but I'm afraid that people won't listen to us that long. And so,
Right?
as we bring this thing in, we want to encourage everybody to catch up with Coach Callie. They're at Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and watch her content. Her content is engaging. It reaches thousands, literally tens of thousands of people. And you would not think that type of content would reach so many people, but it does. I mean, because you're not doing a 7-minute dance, right? Or something
Yeah.
like that.
You're right. You're right.
The content is in depth and it is valuable. So go check her out. Send her a message. Let her know how much she's helped you. Uh, Put it in the comments. And if you've gotten any value from this whatsoever, go ahead and smash the bell and subscribe to Teacher Talk. And we're going to come back because we're going to do some live stuff too. So
Yeah, I would
I'm
love that.
excited about that. So
Yeah.
thank you all for joining in. Thank you, Coach Callie. We appreciate it. And we will see you next time.